G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. The 2025 season is slowly creeping upon us and it is a good time to get this video out. Once again, I bring on an AFL creator from every single AFL club and ask for their head and heart predictions, where they think their team will place on the ladder. It's the third year running now we're doing this series on the channel and it is becoming a fan favourite, no doubt, and it's just great to get the community involved. It's really starting to build year by year, more creators, just some quality content out there, and because of this I've decided to bring on some new guests on the channel. Great to have some new faces and hear some different opinions and voices. It's very hard just picking one creator from every single AFL club, so yeah, there are some new people on this video today. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you do going to enjoy today's video. It's always a long and detailed one, but it's a fun one to go over. So yeah, we'll pretty much react to each creator's clip and yeah, give my thoughts, and we'll have the graphics and the ladder, and you know, just gives you a bit of a visual aid on what people are thinking. So without further ado, let's begin. Pop on the cans. We begin as always with the Adelaide Crows. I've had George on, great Supercoach creator the last few years, but this year had to bring on the Gads man. A bit of an eccentric type in a good way, but makes some awesome historical content, so make sure to check him out.
We're not going to finish last, are we? Oh, wrong team. The voices in my head, aside from telling me to burn things, say that the experienced young core will continue to improve. The three-tier forward line works so well with 𝐓𝐴𝐿 back, who are 2023's top scorers, so that will be fine. It's the midfield and back line that concern me. A&B and Peatling will go a long way to help the mids, although a star presence is missing. And the key backs are more experienced now, although not as experienced as I would like, although I think our smalls might get torn apart. My head says to temper expectations. Top 8 in scoring, but overall 10th place, maybe 9th, Nick's sacked for Scott Burns. My heart, I'm getting flickering readings, almost as if my heart is broken, but it's ready to be broken again. 𝐓𝐿 will lay waste to all. Cumming fixes the backline by himself. 𝐼𝐗𝐿𝐿𝐿 wins the best and fairest and guides us to 5th, a final against Port Adelaide, which we win. The dusky moonlight reflecting off of Matty Nix's bald head into the sky like the bat signal, writing large into the night sky to watch out in 2026. The Crows are here and they are coming. Might have got carried away, but 5th seems fair.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's going to be a good video. What a bar to set, eh? Oh, that is quality. That's probably the best clip we've had out of the 3 years of doing this so far. The green screen, the graphics, the Canberra Raiders slander, which just cannot be tolerated. But made some really good points, of course, on top of that too. So yeah, with his heart, having them as 5th, and then the head, I think it was 9th or 10th. This just has to be the year where they've got to succeed, Adelaide. The fans have had enough, they want change, and it is a little bit evident with Gaz's reactions in that video. Feels like they've got a few young players that could really go to the next level, like 𝐼𝐗𝐿𝐿𝐿, 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿 another, and they donned a few young kids in the back half last year, like Billy Dowling, and also Zach Taylor was another too. So if they're able to get things right and get some consistency in their game, it seems like pretty fair enough predictions. They should be pushing at the absolute least 12th onwards. So yeah, no, I love that video from Gaz. Let's now move on to the Brisbane Lions. And yeah, of course, we have to bring this man on once again of 𝐓𝐿 𝐴𝐿𝐿.
In terms of where Brisbane finished this year, it really depends on how well our young fellas can develop and build on last year. We saw some really good things in the match sim that just happened between Brisbane and Gold Coast and Collingwood, the triple threat. Levi Ashcroft looked really promising. Logan Morris has put on a ton of muscle. Will Ashcroft hasn't missed a beat. Things are looking pretty good. So I think we have all the makings to go deep again in September. Back to back is a whole nother story, but as we saw last year, anything can happen.
Okay, so 𝐓𝐿 with his call there on the lines. I think he forgot to lead the head and heart predictions. It's happened before. It's not the end of the world. So we'll just assume that, well, according to what he said about he thinks they can go deep again, we'll have them in the top 4, and look, with the heart, we'll just have them winning the flag. I think every Lions supporter's heart does say they can go back to back. But I like what he had to say about the youth. It really depends on how the youth does develop. It was a big factor last year in the premiership run. You know, Kyle Lohmann had a breakout year. Logan Morris came in, and how impressive was he? He was just so good aerially. Levi Ashcroft would certainly make an impact from year 1 too. And just is overall such a talented footy team when you look at their young players and of course their veterans, and you'd think they'll be back up there again in 2025. So that's what Egg had to say. Now move on to the Pies. We've had 𝐻𝐿 on for the last 2 years, the great man, but I had to bring this guy on, a bit of an up and coming creator. He's been making some great content the last year or so. It's Pies Footy.
Regarding Collingwood season in 2025, my head says anywhere between 4 and 6. We've got the list, as everyone would know. Yes, we're a little bit older. So that's where things can get a little bit messy, and synergy, energy, all these things matter. So 4 to 6 is my head. My heart is 2 to 5. Houston, Membry, Perryman, I think they're all going to fit in very well. Yeah, it just depends how it all comes together. You know, most AFL lists look good on paper. I could make an argument for North Melbourne to get close to the 8 to 12 range. West Coast could be 6 to 10. So it's just a lot of variables, but that's where my head and heart is at the moment for season 2025.
Rightio, so Anthony, with some pretty fair enough predictions there, it's understandable. I think a lot of Collingwood supporters are very bullish that their side can return to top 8 football, but it's just risky at the same time. They have the oldest list in the AFL, but when you do look at the numbers, usually premiers of the AFL are usually one of the more older teams in the competition on a yearly basis. And if Collingwood are able to keep injury-free for the most part, at least their more important players, I think that can definitely make a charge. Houston, Perryman, Membry, 3 members that could really make a huge impact, especially Houston off the half-back line. I felt Collingwood's run and gun game was stifled a little bit, so Houston is a lovely kick, especially through the corridor. They're going to move Josh Dacos back there as well. So, yeah, they've got the list. Anthony did say that. They certainly have the list to push on and return to top 8 football. So, yeah, pretty fair enough predictions there from Pies Footy. We'll now move across to Carlton. We've had Pommy on the last 2 times, but we had to now bring on his co-host of Terry, who owns and runs Blue Abroad.
My head and my logic tells me that this group's been together for a long time, particularly the core of it. They're not kids anymore. We've got a nice little sprinkling of kids with the group, but with the experience, bit of finals in there as well, they're ready to start winning 15, 16, hopefully 17 plus games. But we're in such a strong position for 2/3 of 2024 before it all started falling apart. So logically, I'm thinking if we can just stay healthy, get some more continuity with this group, I think the compound effect of that continuity will hopefully start taking place, and it will start being an advantage, and we'll be ready to lock ourselves in for a top 4 spot, whether that's second, third. That's what my head tells me. 16, 17 wins would be great. My heart, if I'm being totally honest, my heart says to me that there's something that's just still not there with the group. Like, do they really have the minerals? Do they really have what it takes to win the whole thing and surge up? In my experience as a Carlton supporter, it feels like we've always been susceptible to something going wrong in a year. So I don't know if we've grown out of that yet. So that's what my heart says. My heart says maybe a little bit more heartbreak before they figure it out. My head says logically they're ready. So hopefully my head is right and my heart is wrong, but we'll see.
I think this is one of the first times we've had someone's head tell them that, yeah, we've got to be a top 4 side, but the heart, usually the more optimistic call, is actually a bit more of the pessimistic call from Terry. So, yeah, that's fairly interesting. Now, he didn't actually specify a ladder position for his heart. I just put them 8th. He said heartbreak, so I didn't want to be too harsh and have them 9th. Let's just assume, they might make finals and they lose a heartbreaker in either final. But it was interesting to hear what he had to say about Carlton regarding his head. It's a list that has been with each other for quite a while, especially when you look at the core players. They've been together for a number of years now, so could the continuity and chemistry really build? Yeah, it's the consistency, it's the chemistry. I think it's more of the 1%ers and the little things they've really got to build on. I think the Blues, if they want to see success. Yeah, great to have Terry, the great man, on the channel. Let's now move on to Essendon. We've had Herb on the last 2 times, but we've decided to bring on a new lad by the name of Joe. He is a co-host on the Centre Bounce, a great Supercoach content channel. He's a lovely chap. Let's hear what he has to say about his Dons.
The head and the heart are certainly aligned this year. We are not contending. You can ask anybody that question and they'll tell you the same. They'll have us probably, or most likely, in the bottom 4. Look, I personally don't think that will be the case. I think we have enough talent, high-end talent, to get us out of the bottom 4, as well as some great experienced leadership in the captain, Zach Merritt, to lead the way in the midfield. Guy Caldwell and Sammy Durham certainly had breakout years last year in the midfield. Anticipate that this year will also be the rise of one 𝐼𝙗𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐼, who was much maligned last year. I anticipate he will be playing on the ball and performing very well. The forward line is going to be more dynamic as well. add �𝐞𝐞 to the mix with Caddy, and it's going to be a really dynamic duo over there. And the back line, hopefully Zach Reid can stay fit on the park. My head says that we'll finish 14th, and in my heart, I reckon we can sneak a couple of wins extra and finish 12th.
Okay, so Joe there with his call on the Dons, and pretty level-headed, to be honest. I still have that deep feeling, and I think Joe deep down feels like this team could be a final smoky. That's the optimism I think every supporter has of their team at this stage of the season, to be fair. But yeah, they definitely have the talent, and they have the leadership of Zach Merrett, like he did state, to at least get out of the bottom four. It's hard to see a side like Essendon be that low, considering they were second place around the bye rounds midway through last year. Liked what he had to say on the forward line too. It's going to be more dynamic. It just has to be. Essendon were terrible with their conversion inside 50 last year. Could someone like 𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐞 and a bit of an improvement of 𝐵𝐵𝗡𝗏 and 𝐴FL and those types as well come to the fore, and that really improved that area. And yeah, excited to see Sardis too. A lot of Essendon supporters have been really keen in with their pre-season notes and looked pretty shrewd against the Doggies too. So yeah, some pretty fair enough calls there from Joe. We'll now move across to the Fremantle Dockers, and 𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐞 is on the channel once again this year. Let's hear what he has to say about his beloved Dockers.
This is a year where it's time for action. No more promise, no more they're a young team given time. This is where we have to start competing. My head is telling me third, my heart is telling me first, and there's no reason why either of those can't happen in 2025. In the off-season, we filled voids in our list, especially Shai Bolton. His versatility gives us a great headache up forward and further back when he pinch hits in the midfield. We've drafted fantastically. A few later draft picks such as Charlie Nichols and Aiden Riddle will actually be pushing for debuts this year. They've looked really promising in preseason, and especially our top 15 pick in 𝘬𝐵𝗶𝗶𝗹 Reid. He looks absolutely fantastic. He is pushing super hard for a round one spot. He can pinch it in the midfield. He can play as a high half forward, and he is so clean, so smooth, and he's got composure beyond his years. He honestly, he does not look like an 18-year-old when he's out there playing for us in those intra-clubs. And even in that Indigenous All-Stars game, I thought he looked really, really good. It's going to be a year of patience for some of our older guys who have been great servants to the club. In particular, guys like Jaeger O'Meara, Nat Fyfe, even the younger guys like Neil Erasmus and Matt Johnson will have to be quite patient. Quinton Narkle, we've brought him in as a bit of depth, and I'm sure he'll get some games throughout the year, but he definitely won't be straight into the team, as well as James 𝐴𝐴𝐶 and Bailey Banfield, a couple of older guys. They've all been really good contributors to the club, but they'll need to be patient with the depth we have this year. It's a really good headache to have, but it's a really difficult one as well, and if we can find that mix early enough in the season, that will put us in a great position to contend this year. I think our main thing is definitely our health. Our season completely derailed last season when we lost some of our key position pillars. Those three pillars being Sean Darcy, Josh Tracy, and Alex Pearce. If those three can stay fit, then there is zero reason, and it would be unacceptable for us not to be playing on prelim weekend. My expectations for us are so high. Now is time for action. My head says third, my heart says first.
Okay, so 𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐞 chips in. He is all in on his Dockers for 2025, and fair enough. It's a team that just has to succeed. Were looking like a top 4 team in the back half of last year, then faded out with some key injuries like Josh Tracy, and really should have made finals. But yeah, really detailed stuff of what he had to say with pretty much everything. The new draftees, the recruits they've brought in. Shai Bolton, really keen to see. Is he that missing link to their forward game? Because we talk about same old Freo where they just can't move the ball, they can't put on high scores, but they are adding key pieces to this solid young core in this really promising list. Can't really disagree at all with 𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐞 having top 4 in both of his predictions. He is thinking Freo are in for a big year. Next up, let's move on to the Geelong Cats, and for the third year running we have gotten on once again Ben Reeve from the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 crew. Let's see what he has to say about the Cats.
My head says that the Cats will finish top 4. I'm even going to say my head says Cats finish top 2. And that's just me basing that on who we're playing, where we're playing, looking at the fixture and looking at all the results and seeing how all the other teams are matched up and so forth. And that's what the ladder predictor spit it out for me. Now, maybe I'm a little bit biased. Maybe that's true. But that's what my head was telling me, and that's what I'm going to go for in my footy tipping for this year as well. Pick the Cats most of the time. Now, my heart says things might fall apart a little bit. There's a few question marks on how Bailey Smith's going to work. The list, not all the list, there's a lot of young guys coming through, but there are a lot of older guys as well. So my heart says probably 7 to 8. Still making finals, but somewhere else down the ladder.
Just like Blue Broad's clip, it's another one we have today of the heart call being a little bit more of the pessimistic decision. Pretty understandable though, I think, alongside him and a lot of Cats fans to decide that will most likely be contending once again, and a good chance for the top 4 with what he had to say about where we're playing, the fixture, etc. You're just locking the Cats with a lot of those wins at home at 𝐓𝐴, and also did discuss a bit more of those younger players coming through with his heart call. It could be a bit of a struggle with some young players coming on, and the unknown of Bailey Smith. Are they really gonna bring the best out of him? It also was displayed quite a bit last year too. Their consistency over a full season, it was very lopsided. They looked great a few weeks and a month or two, and then they looked shocking for a patch of the season too. So it could be really anywhere where the Cats do lie. Top 4 is a good chance, but also, teetering around the 8. Not a bad call either from Ben there. So that is the Cats segment, and we now move across to the GWS Giants. And we have gotten on Amato once again for 2025.
The Giants' 2025 season is one that promises to be a very, very interesting time for the club, with the 3 big losses of Peatling, Cumming and Perryman all going into state, as well as the inclusion of Stringer. Honestly, it's going to be very interesting to see how Stringer fits into that forward line. My head says he might not. With the sort of forward line we've built around Hogan and Green, as well as the rise of Cadman in the last few years, there is a world where we slide out of the 8 on the back of those back-to-back finals losses last year. However, my heart is saying that we have been such a successful team the last 10 years in terms of playing finals on a consistent basis. I think we can go top 4 again, and with learning from the mistakes that we made in last year's final series, where we did honestly play 7 out of the 8 quarters of footy very, very well. So my heart is telling me we're good enough to make the top 4 again. I don't think first or second. I think maybe Geelong and honestly Brisbane could do it again. I think we might finish 4th. That's what my heart is telling me. That's sort of the position I see us in.
Okay, so Mano's call there on the Giants for 2025, and that was pretty interesting with Jake Stringer. It feels like Stringer's the one with a new environment that could easily kick over 40 goals and really get back up there. He was Essendon's highest goal scorer from last year, but he's thinking with his head, maybe it might not fit with a few of the small forwards we've got. It's a really well-drilled forward line, the Giants, and it's known for its forward pressure. And Stringer sort of lacks that, defensive pressure a little bit. So there definitely isn't a world where things probably could work out. And off the back of back-to-back finals losses, which is just absolutely brutal. Top 4 again, you could definitely see it. The range is pretty big for the Giants, but still a very talented team, pretty balanced, and just a tough as nails side in the pressure game. No doubt. That's what Marto had to say on his Giants. Radio, next up, the Gold Coast Suns. We have got on once again the Gold Coast Suns fan page from Instagram. Reason why I'm voiceovering this is because of my inability to let people know early enough for these clips. And just with different circumstances, he got it in a little bit late. But let's see what old mate has to say.
I think this is the year that we finally reach finals for the first time in our history. And the reason that I think that that'll happen is that this is inarguably the strongest team that we've ever had in our history. And it's not just because of arrivals like Dan Rioli, John Noble, Leo Lombard, but I think it's also the development that we're expecting to see from Baz Humphrey, Mac Andrew, who should flick forward and back, Buddy Yulin, Jake Rogers, Ethan Reid, Jed Walter. I mean, I can keep going, but I'll stop. All that combined with a deep squad that I think are equipped to handle any injuries that will inevitably happen. It's football. There will be injuries. But I think that we've got a deep squad in all areas to be able to handle those injuries when they do happen. So all that, I think, will lead us to 7th in a very tightly packed ladder. It's going to be a super competitive year. I'm really looking forward to it. But using my heart, the thing is that progression isn't always linear in football. If we can get more progression out of some of these young pieces that I'm talking about, and if they show that they're ready to go, then I really think there's no reason we can't be a top 4 side in this league. We've seen it with Brisbane in the past. We've gone from the bottom 4 to the top 4. I know it might sound weird coming from a Suns fan who hasn't seen his team play finals, but I do think that could happen. We've got a young side, and if we see more progression, then I'm going to say 4th, or maybe even 3rd.
Rightio, so some lovely optimistic calls there from Hudson on his take for the Suns in 2025. Geez, they've got an exciting list up and coming with plenty of young players. Did mention Mac Andrew off the back of a big contract, Jed Walter, Jake Rogers. Unfortunate for Lombard hurting his shoulder though in that practice game, but you think he could still make an impact in year 1. They definitely have the tools and assets, and they've recruited well in the off-season. Surely this is where the strengths come to the fore, and they can finally make that finals push, or at least be in competition for a final spot in the last few weeks. That's never been the case. I think we're all excited as neutrals to see how the Suns do go this year. So thanks very much for the fan page for coming on once again. Next up, Hawthorn we have got on once again for 2025. Does Talks Footy.
The Hawks, my goodness me, the media train is speeding towards Waverley in a big way. Not sure how I feel about it. If I follow my heart, look, the Hawks are going 26-0 and winning the flag. And I'm pretty much thinking the media are trying to get opposition fans to think the same, which might be a little bit over the top. But we can dream, so why not? The heart says we should be a top 4 side. Probably says more second or third at this point in time. Maybe lock in third, mate. But my head, in all honesty, I still think the tall forward problem is going to be one that affects the Hawks in a massive way. So I'm going to have us as 5th. And I think the Hawks could have one All-Australian this year. I think Dylan Moore is going to be hard to stop. Sicily and Day, along with Newcomb, can make the All-Australian 40. And that's how the Hawks will go this year.
Righto, so Daz there, and liked what he had to say right off the bat with the media hype. It just feels like this team is getting unbelievable treatment by the media, and a lot of support is getting around them. But there is a massive contingency of people that are sort of against it, thinking, well, they are a bit more of a younger team. They had a breakout year, so are they going to back that up? It's a very divided one, the Hawks. And yeah, the Dylan Moore shout for All-Australian back-to-back could definitely be on the cards too. And yeah, a bit more of a level-headed call with his head saying the key forward problems could be an issue. Mitch Lewis just can't get out in the field consistently enough, and it feels like with Charles' antics, is he the one to really win a flag with this team? He has his up and down moments, but we all know the modern day game. It's all about the smalls, and Hawthorn smalls, arguably the best in the comp. Some great points Daz did make in his clip. Let's now move across to the next team, which is, of course, the Melbourne Football Club. And 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐴, the great man, the godfather, of course, of AFL content creation on YouTube, is here once again for his say on the Ds.
Alright, when I go with my head, I think the Ds can still be in and around that top 8 mark. I think we'll finish between 10th to 7th this season. I'm going to tip as 8th. I'll land in the middle, sit on the fence and say that the Ds can sneak into 8th this season. When I go with my heart though, Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, May, Lever, Pickett, Fritsch, like our stars, if they can stay healthy, are some of the best in the comp. So I think if we can stay healthy this year, and I tip with my heart, I think there's a sniff. I think we're a chance to finish a little bit higher if everything goes right. I think our absolute ceiling is potentially sneaking into the top 4 and finishing 4th. I might have set myself up to fail, but that's what footy's all about.
Rightio, so 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐴, really positive calls there on his Ds for 2025. Yeah, they are one of the more harder teams to predict in 2025, Melbourne, no doubt. Past their top talent, which is, you know, that top end's still some of the best in the comp out of any team. The depth is a bit of a concern, and the younger players are now starting to don them a little bit more. Blood the youth, and they've drafted well the past 2 seasons. Harvey Langford's going to obviously shine, let's hope, in his first season. Caleb Windsor got plenty of experience in his first year last season too. Just the area of concern past that top end talent is the role players, and is the rest of that best 22 able to carry their weight enough and get back up there. And you know, they've got to get back to their strengths of contested ball and turnover game. But solid calls there from 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐴. A lot of Melbourne fans bullish, and he is certainly one of them. Big calls on his Ds. Let's now move to North Melbourne, and Big J makes his return on the channel from the Centre Bounce once again for 2025.
North Melbourne in 2025, my heart says, hey, if we can get 8+ wins, I'm very, very happy. Doubling up plus a couple on what we did last year. But, mate, my head, after watching this pre-season inter-club match, calm down. I hope we can even get 3. There's a lot of things that need to get fixed, but hopefully the boys can do it.
Rightio, so Big J, his calls there on North Melbourne, pushing for 8 wins. So usually on an AFL ladder, that results to around 15th. It feels like North, do they have enough? Do they have enough assets? And just the lack of winning culture too is a bit of a concern as well. Are they able to change things around and push for that 8 wins mark? I think that would be most definitely a success for them. They had a lot of close losses last year too, and they were a lot more competitive for longer in games, it felt like last year as well. So there just has to be improvement in this team. They recruited well in bringing in some much needed veterans like Luke Parker, and of course Caleb Daniel. Just bring some voices and some mentorship for those younger players. It's just that senior core of players still is a concern. The longevity of a season 2 and the lack of winning culture. A lot of things you got to realise with North Melbourne. Can they make the big jump? His head thinks probably not, but the heart, they could push on at least out of the bottom 3. So yeah, good to have Big J on once again for this season. Now let's move across to Port Adelaide, and the pair is back with his call on Port Adelaide.
Firstly, I'm going to go with my heart, and Port Adelaide has a strong place in my heart and has nearly caused me to break it many, many times. But I am predicting with my heart that we will finish with a flag. Now, I said this last time, but the fairy tale of Ken coaching his last year at Port Adelaide and going out with a premiership would be absolutely outstanding, and sending Travis Boak off as well would be just what fairy tales are truly made of. But if I'm thinking with my head, I have predicted Port Adelaide to finish 4th. We have a strong side, strong capability, a dynamic forward line as well in 2025, which I think will catch a lot of sides off guard this year. So fingers crossed, either way, I'll be happy. Either way, let's just hold up the cup.
Okay, so Anthony with his call there on the pair, yeah, big fan of that. This is a team that has made top 4 the past few seasons, and it's good to see a creator really backing his team. For them to win a flag under Ken, it would be a great story, no doubt. And yeah, 4th place definitely makes sense. They've made top 4 the last 2 years in a row, and yeah, just that, I feel like that midfield on paper is still some of the best in the AFL. Like, yeah, some of their role players and forward and defensively on paper, they could have their issues, but they're just a really good team in terms of just picking up the results they need to. Like, look at last year, the season was at the crossroads, but they just ticked the boxes, got those wins at home, the fortress of the Adelaide Oval, and they ended up finishing in 2nd. Yeah, Anthony, good calls there on the pair. Top 4 at the absolute middle of them, he is thinking. Okay, so now let's move on to the Richmond Tigers. Got a new guest on for 2025. You might know him as Pink Pandas. He made some AFL 23 content whilst that game was relevant, but he runs a really good channel with all the Tigers news that you need to know, called Big Footy Tigercast. Let's see what Chris has to say.
Where will the Tigers finish in 2025 based on what the head thinks? The head thinks that if we can keep Lynch, Taranto, Prestia and Hopper on the park for about 16 to 17 games, that we might be able to edge out a 15th or a 14th at an absolute stretch. But if you're to ask, where do I think the Tigers will finish in 2025 from the heart thinks that we're probably going to still be a bottom 2 side. And we're just going to hope to see some development from the young Cubs, and yeah, let's see where 2025 takes us.
Rightio, so now we have another call on this video today where the heart is being a little bit more pessimistic than what the head is thinking. And that's honestly pretty fair enough. When you look at Richmond, especially at the start of last year, before the mass exodus of injuries they had, they brought it up to some teams. They knocked off the Swans, they lost to Carlton by under a kick, but their list is looking a whole lot different than the previous years. It looks like a whole new team with just even some of those core players like their best and fairest of Rioli leaving the club, Baker, Graham, etc. Just need to get players out there fit and firing, and as Chris did say, if that's the case, they could maybe be a world where they do push, towards the verge of the edge of the bottom 4. But the heart saying, yeah, it's going to be probably a long year. Just want to see strong development, but probably looking like there might be a bottom 2 side once again from what the heart is thinking from Chris. So that's what he had to say about his Tigers. Let's now move across to the Saints, and Carly makes his return on the channel once again.
Using my head, it gets hard, honestly, as a St Kilda fan, any year to be confident heading into a season, but particularly this year when every news article about Saints is a negative thing. Injury after injury, you look somewhere, there's a new injury. Philippou, Howard, and other players who are in doubts for round 1. It isn't a great way to start off the year. So I'm going to say we'll finish 11th. There might be one of those years where we don't take a backward step, but we bit of a stagnant season. Let players like Darcy Wilson, our new recruits, shine through, get games into them, because I'm excited to see how Travaglia, Turu perform. But are we going to get enough output from players up forward, like, I don't know, Caminiti or a Sharman, if King gets injured again? Because you just never know, with obviously Memory leaving, and you've got Battle, Howard who's injured. Our defence is going to be a little bit of a question mark. So I think there are other teams around the 8 that are probably going to push into the 8 a little bit quicker than the Saints. However, I can't not have us in the 8 when using my heart. So I think we'll finish 7th. I think with how we finished last year, that was really, really exciting. We killed seasons such as Carlton's, Geelong's, Essendon's, especially in Marvel. If we play really fast, exciting, attacking footy, we can almost beat anyone on any day. So we're just going to see that a little bit more consistency. Who knows, a Jack Macrae surprise All-Australian season could be enough for the Saints to do enough to finish in the 8. But yeah, look, it's going to be a difficult one for St Kilda. Not many are saying we're going to do very well. A lot are saying bottom 4. We'll win at least 10, 11 games, but I'm going to say that using my head, 11th, using my heart, 7th.
Okay, so some strong points there with Cardi regarding his Saints. Head telling him around 11th, but the heart got to be having them in the top 8, and they did look really good in the back half of 2024. Their ball movement really did improve as the season did wear on. They did lose a lot of close games. It's the most amount of close games out of any team last year, but like under 2 goals. So there were a lot of winnable games where they did drop. But the injuries are definitely a concern, but it's a long season. You can't look at it too much. Like, look at Hawthorn last year. They were killed by injuries, and then they end up making finals in the end of it. But if all the things do come to the fore as the season does wear on, improve the continuity, really turn into a bit more of a high scoring side, there could be a world where the Saints do shock the AFL world again. So yeah, good points Cardi did make there on his Sainters. Now move across to my team, the Sydney Swans. We've had the great man of Donny Hess from the US on the last 2 times, but we have to bring on a new guest this time by the name of Boundary Riders. Make some solid content. Let's see what he has to say on the Swannies.
My heart says that because the Swans dominated a large part of last season and were pretty much the envy of the comp for a lot of it, I think they're in for another strong year. Going into the season, they look like they have a pretty healthy list at the moment, with only McDonald and maybe Hayden McLean potentially missing round 1. And I think that a lot of people haven't really mentioned the fact that Cal Mills was one of the best midfielders a couple of years ago, and he seems to be playing that role once again. And with Mills being able to play that more defensive midfield role, it just gives the likes of Golden, Warner and Heaney a license to play their more natural game. So in my opinion, my heart kind of sits with the Swans fitting in the top 4, maybe in 3rd spot. However, my head says that there are a couple of issues with the Swans going into this season. The fact that they got smashed in the grand final, teams don't usually respond very well to that. And we've seen in most recent times, 2022 grand final, the Swans the next year had a really poor start to their season, and we're always trying to claw back a really poor start to the season, and only just scraped into finals in 2023. And also the uncertainty of a new coach in Dean Cox. Really unsure how the Swans are going to be able to manage that, as well as the contract talks with Chad Warner. I really think there's a lot of uncertainty around the Swans. So in saying that, my head says that the Swans probably be teetering on the 8, probably around 7th spot.
Okay, well, it's really hard to go against pretty much anything Boundary Rider said there in his predictions. The heart having the Swans back up there again, contending and pushing on for a top 4 spot. And it's a really good point he did make. You know, Callum Mills, 2021 to 2022, was a very, very good inside midfielder. All-Australian midfielder he was in 2022. So we can't forget about him. And just like a few teams in the competition, the Swans just know how to get it done in the home and away season. They get the results they need. And they're very good at home as well. Tough to beat at the SCG for the most part. But then on the other side of the coin, there is definitely a world, and Boundary Riders did say that they could maybe be a bit of a vulnerable chance to slip out of the 8. Their forward line and back line stocks are a little bit thin. If someone like 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿 and 𝐸𝐿𝐼 goes down, that could really hurt them defensively. When you get built in the grand final, there is a bit of uncertainty on how a team can go the next season. So pretty well balanced take there from Boundary Riders on his head and heart predictions for the Swannies. Let's now move across to the Western Bulldogs. We've got the great man of Bev on. He was on for the last 2 years, but now we've got a new guest on. He's been making some awesome content the last few years. It is Blaze at 17.
So starting off with my heart, like every other creator, you like to have a little bit of hope and optimism for your team heading into 2025. And I've also got that. I feel like the Dogs still have one of the best lists on paper. I feel like we're still yet to truly capitalize the talent on our team. And maybe this just could be the year with the doors knocking for Bevo. Maybe he's able to fire up the boys and get them truly going. And maybe we can refine some of that hunger and get back to the glory days. So my heart is telling me, be optimistic, and I think the Dogs will finish 5th. But if we want to take off our bias cap and use the old noggin, which I don't often use, let's be real, the Dogs have had a very controversial and tough preseason with guys like 𝐓𝐿𝐼𝐿, Waitman, Treloar, Richards, all missing time and all likely to miss time to start the season. It's going to be a very rocky start for the Dogs, and I don't think they'll be able to find their rhythm across the year, and I think they will just miss out on the finals. They'll be very close, but just fall short. My head's telling me the Bulldogs will finish 10th.
Right, so Blake, his call on the Doggies' heart going for 5th, but with the head thinking a little bit more about the injuries and the rocky start of the season could definitely happen too. I can't afford to have any of those guns go down. I mean, look at Liam Jones, for example. He's down again with another hamstring. Rory Lobb's just a critical importance for them this year to hold down the fort defensively. It still concerns me past that top-level talent. Just that bottom 6 area of their best 23 feels like a bit of a letdown. So it feels like they've got to get a little bit more out of those role plays. Could they have a bit of a revelation like Joel Frazier, who was very good in his first year? Could he go to the next level? But the Dogs, they're a massive enigma every single year. God knows where they will place. But overall, some pretty, level-headed predictions there from Blaze with his head and heart. And the final team now we move across to is West Coast. We've had Jesse on from True Footy the last few years. I think he's unavailable at the moment, just couldn't get in contact with him. So instead, we've got a new guest on with 𝐷𝐞 Sports. They make some awesome quizzes and do a lot of those games, I guess you can say, on their channel the past few seasons. So let's bring them on. BT, let's hear what he has to say about his Eagles.
Let's start with my heart. I would just love to see the Eagles win probably half of their home games, snag a few away, push that 8-win mark, maybe even 10. If we play really well and have an injury-free season, if we could push that 13th mark, that would be a huge win for the Eagles. Obviously, with a few Harley Reid highlights in there, you can't complain with that. But realistically, when I think about it, are we better than Richmond? Yeah, we are. Are we better than North Melbourne? That's up for discussion there. So I don't think we're better than anyone else. So that's still that 16th, 17th mark. So I think that's where realistically we'll be finishing. It's probably 16th or 17th again.
Okay, so BT there from 𝐷𝐞 Sports on his say, and I think a lot of Eagles supporters would probably be in agreement with that. With the heart, surely push out of the bottom 4. It was a year of improvement in 2024 with a lot more wins, a few ball over victories, some breakout performances, and then with the head thinking about, well, are we better than certain teams? I mean, you'd say they'd be better than Richmond in 2025, but North Melbourne, well, that's going to be an interesting one. Certainly is up for debate. Who is better? You can make cases for both sides. North probably on paper some better players, but then with the Eagles, with a few of those younger players coming through and some veterans still showing significant importance like Jerry McGovern, All-Australian last year, Jake Waterman, Oscar Allen, can he get back to his best? And, you know, their midfield throughout games last year was very impressive too with the clearances. Yeah, they could push out of the bottom 4, but on paper is still probably one of the more worse lists in the competition, and could be a year where they could stagnate at the bottom 4 once again. So yeah, up for debate the Eagles, but yeah, some pretty understandable predictions there from BT. And that pretty much wraps it up, everybody. As you can see on your right hand side of screens, that is what the ladder has shaped up to be. So creators' predictions from what their head tells them and what their heart says. So it's nice to see just that visual aid of what everybody on this video today is thinking on their teams. And do you agree? Let me know in the comments down below. And that pretty much wraps up the video today, everybody. Always a pretty lengthy one, but I love to, yeah, just react to these clips and give my say on the clips and a little bit on each team and how they'll go in 2025. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're going to enjoy it. And of course, check out all these channels down below. Their links will be in the description that I showed, of course, on the banners when introducing each of them. My personal predictions, ladder predictions, etc. will be out next week, so stay tuned for those. But always a fun video to do today. So if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Heavily appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, friends.